should not listen to men's rights advocates if you want to know what they have to say.
Looked like he was getting into something good on Twitter.
Yeah.
You get distracted by retards on Twitter again.
Well, it's what happens when I forget how to set my alarm. So, we are hot mic'd, by the way, but everybody needs to know Hannah screwed up, and when I screw up, I do a good job of screwing up. Yeah, 15 minutes late.
15 minutes is not late.
I'm running on woman time today, guys. Just so you know.
Which is never late. It turns up exactly when fate decides she will.
Yeah. No, a woman is never late. You misogynist. No. Seriously. I just have to learn the difference between AM and PM on my alarm clock. It really sucks. That's such a dumb screw up. But, I mean, I do shit like that all the time. So, there you go. So, hello and welcome to HBR Talk 345, Hostile Aggressive Funding. This is an interesting one, guys, because, okay, so there's a term, hostile aggressive parenting, and it generally means interfering in the other parent's access and lying about the other parent in order to abuse the other parent by turning the children against the other parent and denying the other parent access, like marginalizing the other parent on purpose as a tool of abuse. So this hostile aggressive funding title, you'll see what I mean here. But I'm your your host, Hannah Wallen, here with Nonsense Annihilator Lauren Brooks, and the personification of perceptivity, Mike Stevenson. And tonight, dear feminists, we want a divorce. But before we do that, we gotta do what we gotta do. As always, Honey Badger Radio dishes out a smorgasbord of thought-provoking discussions, and as experiences both recent and long past have demonstrated, the provoked thoughts are fighting back. They've made it clear that for people like us, relying on third-party payment platforms like Patreon to fund our work is treading on thin ice, or building our house in the path of a rapidly growing wildfire. In light of this, we strongly encourage our supporters to switch at least their support for us to feedthebadger.com, the most stable way to help us out. And if you want to tip us directly instead of relying on any social media platform's tip jar, the link for that is feedthebadger.com/justthetip. And as always, the same risk applies to our social media platforms, which is why you should further provoke the thought police by tracking our thought-provoking discussions on honeybadgerbrigade.com, where you can find your way to all of our content, as well as a link to feedthebadger.com in the drop-down menu at the top of the page. So, I have been claimed. Gabriel, Phil, and Lucas says, you're our screw-up, Hannah. There we go. Oh, it's so bad. Like, there are mistakes, and then there are, like, you fucking dumbass mistakes. And this one was just a you fucking dumbass mistake. So, like, everybody knows I could do it.
Count yourselves lucky that I'm never in charge of streams.
Oh my gosh.
Can't even imagine all the technical difficulty.
Well, you might just simplify everything, and then we wouldn't have this problem. Like
No,
takes
I would stress out every time, and I would pull out the last strands of hair that I have left on my head.
I kind of do that, although I just have so much hair that you can't tell. Like I have a shit ton of hair. Like you guys have no idea. Oh, but in any case, and it gets everywhere too. Like when we vacuum the house, we have to take a broom and sweep first if we haven't vacuumed in more than a week, which occurs regularly because of my overtime.
Yeah, that's just what happens when you have long hair. My hair gets everywhere as well, but my hair is so thin that it's invisible. Lauren is encountering this problem as well. I've no doubt she still encounters hairs all over her place, but I don't know how she even sees them. Because they're so thin that they're like invisible.
You don't see them, you feel them.
Yes.
Yeah, see, mine is like...
I'm constantly getting them in my mouth when I'm trying to eat. It's awful.
Mine is like somebody bred me for my head to produce something similar to if you combined like silk and Kevlar, you get my hair. And it's not even that thick. It's not like it's not like it's super dense or super like big strands. Like some of those strands are super thin, but when it gets around the beater bar on the vacuum, we've broken like 3 or 4 beater bars on vacuum cleaners, guys. I am not kidding. It is insane. And I mean, yes, it is 3 feet long. My hair is 3 feet long. But that's still like, it literally snapped. The beater bar is an inch thick and it snapped. So like the last time that happened was when I was like, all right, I'm going to take a broom, and because brooms will sweep the hair into a ball, and then it's my hair, so I can pick up the hairball and shove it in a trash can, and nothing breaks. So there you go. But yeah,
I dread to think how much of my hair I've eaten over the years. It shouldn't be too much of a problem, because for centuries, indeed for millennia, we've been eating raw animals with their hair still on, and we're somehow able to digest it. Well, I heard about this one story of this Indian girl who had a habit of chewing on her own hair.
Oh yeah, and she got a big hairball in her gut.
Yeah.
Yeah, see, I can't stand getting my hair in my mouth. That will actually make me vomit. So there you go. But speaking of things that make me vomit, we're going to look at some funding of feminist initiatives today. And this one actually, like, I say this like everything else we've read about didn't piss me off, but this it's yet another thing where we've said this is happening, and feminists gaslight us with, oh, that's not, these things are all privately funded, blah, 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 blah. These are, universities can fund whatever they want, and feminists can do whatever the research they want, and you can do your own research, and blah, blah, blah. This is literally funded by a project grant from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. All right, so if you don't understand why the funding by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services is important, the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services funds the National Independent Partner in Sexual Violence Survey, and these types of surveys and other like types of research done by feminist-led research teams that are pretending to do research while they're actually figuring out ways to frame their ideological claims as research. They use that then after it's done, and they have a set of statistics that looks real and valid. They take that to Congress and they say, well, we need a law to prevent this or to make men do this, an obligatory law, a restriction, a change in sentencing, whatever. Laws that, for instance, guidance that prevents prosecuting attorneys from going after liars in court, for instance, if they've lied about being abused or lied about being raped, and then it turns out that the lie is the allegation, not just lying about, oh, well, I was there to buy drugs, or lying about, well, I was there because I was cheating on my boyfriend or something like that. But no, the actual allegation itself is a lie. They won't go after them. Those stipulations in policy come from research, quote unquote, like this, that is federally funded. So what I found, I decided to look up more on masculinity and femininity, because there is a term that feminists use called hostile masculinity. And they also use a term hostile femininity, but it's not defined in the same kind of way. So it's kind of like toxic masculinity and toxic femininity, where toxic masculinity is behaviors that men engage in that feminists disapprove of, because they on the basis that they are a detriment to women. But hostile or toxic femininity is women engaging in self-sacrifice for others' sake, or women not following the sisterhood, that kind of thing. So it's completely not about any detriment that they are to the opposite sex. It's always, women are always the victims of it. Men are always the beneficiaries of it.
let us not forget that the idea that hostile femininity is some kind of oxymoron is an affectation of traditionalism. The idea that women are naturally demure and submissive. So how could femininity ever be hostile? Well, yeah, that's a result of your ideology. And I know the fact that it's been around for thousands of years, since the advent of chivalry, would make it seem like there's no such thing as hostile femininity. But, how bad does this have to get before you come to the conclusion that you were wrong and that, yes, femininity can absolutely be hostile? I mean, even Shakespeare tried to warn us about this with many of his characters, such as Lady Macbeth and all of this. Going back as far as Eve, from that, that story that you'll remember, eat this apple. Oh, you have to eat this apple. The serpent told me. Well, the serpent's hostile, and you're hostile, and we all fell for it. So yeah, in fact, arguably, femininity is even more inherently hostile than masculinity, because at least men have this notion of fair play. Yes, they are in charge of war. They are in charge of combat. But these things have, rules. There are rules to combat. There's not so many rules to war, but there are still some. There's no rules to the female version of combat. It's like, no, scratch out your eyes, scratch out your hair. Any dirty tactics will work. And it's not just in the physical sense, it's in the psychological sense. Like there are no rules to the hostility of female conflict. There are no boundaries. Not certainly not in the psychological sense. Anything that will destroy you, we will do. And yeah, men have become blind to this ever since the age of chivalry, and that's not a misogynistic thing to say. I'm being respectful of women when I say that. I'm not just saying, oh, they're perfect angels who would never do anything hot. No, they're fucking crafty. Bitches be crafty. Like, be aware.
There you go. And actually, people get the Bible wrong on a lot of counts, right? But the one of the biggest ones that women get wrong is the story of the original sin, the apple, and so on, which we don't actually know that it was that specific kind of fruit, just the fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, right? So that story, if you remember from your days as a kid, when it first gets told to you, is about the devil in the form of an animal appealing to Eve's narcissism, right? Oh, God is hiding this from you. You'll be like God if you eat this fruit. You'll be just like God. It's the same as everything that I've said in the past about humans and the concept of sin as a means of explaining stupid choices, right? Vanity is the devil's favorite sin. Vanity is how we fall every single time. Right? If Eve didn't have a big ego, and she didn't want to be like God, and she just wanted to live her life and be happy and enjoy all of the amenities of the Garden of Eden, and if the devil hadn't been able to convince her that something great that she deserved because she was great was being kept from her, we would never be having this conversation. At least not if we are to believe everything that we read about that particular incident. And personally, I see no reason not to. If you look at the history of women's screw-ups, right? Even the stupid screw-up I had that started the show late, I didn't double-check my work. I didn't double-check when I set the alarm. I know damn well that every time I've screwed up that alarm, it's because I've set for AM when I meant PM or vice versa, and I didn't think it was important at that moment. I didn't feel like, I No, I did it right this time. Didn't do it right this time. Didn't double check. Whoops. Vanity is my favorite sin, right? I'm good enough. I did it right. No double checking. Eve, I'm good enough. I should be like God. Give me that goddamn fruit. Right? That's how women fuck everything up. And the difference between women and men is that when men do that, and they do, there are men who do that, right? They get called on it by everybody. You fucking arrogant bastard, look what you did. Right? When women do it, people are like, oh, don't embarrass her. It's no big deal.
Yeah, she didn't mean to. It was an innocent mistake.
Mm-hmm. You know, even little things like, Joe and Janet both go walking through CVS. Both of them have on a pair of pants that are too long. Both of them have rolled up the pants at the foot, so there's a cuff, and the cuff sticks out a little bit. Both of them walk through, I don't know, the aisle that has all the little medicines, and both of them knock one little tube of medicine off the shelf by accident with the edge of their cuff, and it falls down into the cuff of their pants. Right? Both of them get flagged on their way out the door. Both of them get accused of shoplifting. Right? Joe is going to explain himself, but generally accept the consequences or specifically talk about evidence if he is accused, and
so
the accusers
ironically
stick to it.
Unfortunate name for you to use, given that it was the name of your previous president.
Yeah, there we go.
Who couldn't admit to any of his mistakes.
No,
but
he
yeah,
won't. But yeah, like he'll say, "Oh gosh, I didn't mean to do that. I'm so sorry. Here, I'm not taking it." Or he'll offer to pay for it. Or he'll say, "Well, what does the video show? Does the video show something that indicates I did this on purpose? Because I know you have video on those aisles, right?" But no, Janice, she's going to be like, "I didn't do that. You did this to me. I'm a victim of this situation. How dare you?" And you're clearly holding against me something that was beyond my control, and I'm going to sue. Right? That's where she's going to go with it. She is not going to say, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to do that. What does the evidence show? I'll pay for it." None of that's going to come out of her mouth. She's going to deny, right? She's going to accuse, and she's going to reverse victim and offender. She's going to attack. And that's it. That's the difference. Because she's going to make it all about herself, and he's going to make it all about the misunderstanding and attempt to fix things. He's humble, she's vain. So that's kind of what we're dealing with here as well, right? When I looked at masculinity and femininity, because of that difference in the way masculinity and femininity are treated by feminists, I thought I'd find more stuff about like so-called toxic masculinity, right? What I found was there's a lot of grants that are focused on masculinity, and there's a few grants that are focused on femininity, and interestingly enough, some of them are the same grants. This is one of those. So this is the Department of Health and Human Services funding a study by a student at Wayne State University. They threw $2.7 million in obligated funding. It's 1.7 has been spent for this study, and this paragraph, I'm not reading it from here because I hate all caps. But I looked up, I looked through it, and then I looked up what this initiative is, because this first sentence here is the name of the study. Alcohol's effects on affective, cognitive, and behavioral responses in a virtual reality dating simulation. So this is the actual report, not report of the study, because it's in the process of being done according to its timeline. But this is the proposal. This is on the National Institutes for Health website, NIH.gov. It's reporter.nih.gov, and you'll see this link in the low bar, or at least it should be in the low bar. Alcohol's effects on affective, cognitive, and behavioral responses, an FBR dating simulation. This is the project number.
I feel attacked.
Yeah. Yeah, there we go. And gosh darn it, I hate when websites do this. Oh, you didn't want to see the top of what you were looking at, right? We're going to have this header cover it. So let me see. I'm going to move our window up. Let me unlock it, move it up, and we'll just hide the header. We don't need a header anyway. All right. Abstract. Approximately half of all sexual assaults involve alcohol consumption by the perpetrator, victim, or both. So that's the first sentence, right? I want you to think about this. Approximately half of all sexual assaults involve alcohol consumption by the perpetrator, victim, or both.
Both.
Right?
How the fuck does that work?
Yeah, this is, well, there's two questions here, right? Because if a woman consumes alcohol, her consent is considered invalid, right? So if a man consumes alcohol, why isn't his consent also presumed invalid? The next question becomes with alcohol or with sexual assaults, because when you look at statistics that feminists promote on sexual assaults, they come from a survey that counts it as a sexual assault if you had sex with someone you didn't plan to have sex with because they gave you alcohol, right? Even if you didn't drink it, or because they did you a favor and you felt obligated, or because they misled you about something. So they consider you a rape victim if you're female, right? If a guy lies to you while he's drunk and you have sex with him, you have sex with a drunk guy, he can be a rapist even if you were sober.
Is there any drug that can make someone less susceptible to sexual advances? You would think there would be, because not every drug makes you less inhibited. There are many that make you more inhibited, sort of depending on the situation. There are many drugs that can make you more paranoid. Almost all of them are illegal, up to and including Class A. I mean, weed is one of them. Mm-hmm. It depends on the recipient, but weed is well known for making people more paranoid, and the even stronger psychedelics, such as mushrooms or acid, can make you even more paranoid. And if you find yourself in a situation that makes you paranoid, you're more tempted to sort of run away and stuff. But if this is ever reported to the police, like he gave her mushrooms, they would go, oh well, this obviously made her more impaired and more susceptible to persuasion. And yes, in some situations it is. I mean, arguably in most situations it is. But is there any drug that the police, or indeed the legislative branch, would say does not count as a sort of date rape? No, because every drug does impair you in some sort of way.
There are some drugs.
I'm in deep water here. I should stop.
There are some drugs that actually cause excessive sweating and body odor that might make someone so offensive to other people that a rapist couldn't stand to get close enough to commit the crime. But aside from that, nothing that I can think of. I suppose drugs...
I mean, alcohol is arguably one of those drugs. Alcohol can make you more assertive. It can release your inhibitions, but it can do it in a way that makes you more assertive.
Yeah.
And sort of makes you go, no, fuck you. I'd rather fight you than fuck you.
Yeah, that's true. That is true.
It has that effect among same sexes. Like men who drink alcohol among amongst each other aren't going to start fucking each other. They're going to start fighting each other. Same with women.
Well, especially if one of them makes an advance and the other one is not keen on it. Like, that will result in an ass-kicking one direction or the other.
Theoretically, the same thing could happen with men and women.
Yep.
Like, alcohol could put them more sort of on their guard.
And see, I don't know my situation.
Not
I've
in every
never
situation.
actually been drunk. I got tipsy once and I didn't like it. So I don't like being off balance, and I don't like feeling like I'm not fully in control. So of myself anyway. I don't have to be in control of everything else. But yeah. So my question, my thinking on this, like when you look at this is a statement that a man can be too drunk to consent to sex by the standards that would be applied to a woman and still be called a rapist if he engages in a non-violent sex act with a woman and she later then accuses him of rape. This is what feminists use to promote the idea that being drunk doesn't get a guy out of a rape charge. Self-report surveys conducted with victims and perpetrators have provided valuable information about alcohol's role in sexual assault. However, causality cannot be established from correlational designs. In other words, correlation is not causation. When participants are randomly assigned to drink conditions in laboratory studies, causal conclusions can be made regarding the effects of acute alcohol consumption on behavior. The major challenge for experimentalists is to develop proxies for sexual assault that have strong construct validity and experimental realism. Virtual reality environments provide the opportunity for participants to become immersed in the simulated environment. Thus, participants are expected to behave in ways and to make choices that closely relate to their behavior outside the laboratory. This drives me nuts. There we go. So I think that should still be showing. The tough thing is that the print will be really small on your screen, but I don't want to lose the print off the edges here, so I'm going to have to keep it that way. Virtual reality environments provide the opportunity for participants to become immersed. Thus, participants are expected to behave in ways and make choices that closely relate to their behavior outside the laboratory. So here's the first problem, right? I'm like, everybody that listens that's a gamer will understand this, right? You can become completely immersed in a game that you're playing. Completely. And you will still do things that you would not do in real life. Right? Because you know it's a game. And I'm not just talking about accepting the reality of dragons and elves and monsters and physics that don't apply in the real world and things like that. Weapons that don't exist.
Or indeed the very idea of killing.
Right.
It's a point I've made many times. Like 5-year-olds can play a video game and be like, "Ha ha, you killed me! Ha ha, I killed you!" And they're completely on board with the idea of murdering, and they realize that it's not actual murder; it's just nullifying one of the objects on screen, and then resetting to the point where they're no longer like nullified. They can tell the difference between like actually killing a human being and killing a computer character.
They are safe, and there's solid knowledge that there is no real-world impact for their actions.
It's just play. No one understands play better than children. They can play anything, including being a boy or a girl.
Yeah. So they're basically taking people, they're putting them in an environment that they know is not real, and then they're going to measure their behavior in that environment and attribute likelihood of engaging in that behavior in the real world to those same people. Right? There are virtual reality first-person shooter games where it's just it's the same thing almost as what we used to do, Gen X used to do as kids. We had a game we called Guns. That was the game. The name of the game was Guns. We're playing guns. And that was essentially a free-for-all shootout with not real guns, right? You had everything from plastic guns and toy guns that didn't fire any projectile of any kind, squirt guns, and like little pellet guns that would fire a pellet, but it was just enough that you knew you were hit by something if something actually was on target. To when we ran out, we had kids that held gun-shaped sticks. And a lot of times, you would just point the gun at somebody and yell, bang. And then there was argument over whether or not the person missed. Unless they had a pellet gun, in which case, you knew. And, I mean, we were a little rougher than that in my neighborhood. We fought with BB guns. You just didn't shoot anybody in the face because, you can put someone's eye out with a BB. We didn't have Nerf guns yet. That was, I think, in the 90s when those things came out. It might have been in the 80s, but none of the kids in my neighborhood had them. I think they may have been a little more expensive than our parents could afford, if they existed. Most of us, though, we had squirt guns and stuff. In the summertime, we played with squirt guns all the time. But yeah, there are now VR games that are basically that game. And, you have the same issue of you get hit and you get quote-unquote killed and you're down for a particular period of time and then you re-enter the game because it's not real. You didn't actually die. Your character's not even permanently eliminated. Sir Skeptic says the honest kids would make a ricochet sound when they knew they missed. True. True. There's a lot of fun pretend with those things. And we all knew that there was a huge difference between playing with them and pointing a real gun at a person. You just didn't do that. In fact, if your father had guns or your mother had guns, because in our house my mother had guns, you didn't touch them. That was a no-no. You might get your ass whooped if you touched them. And it was scarier to face the possibility of a parent finding out that you touched the real guns than it was to face the possibility of death if somebody screwed up with the real guns. That was the way it was. So the stats that you see today on kids playing with guns and shooting each other, I think a lot of that is because of the deterioration of discipline in homes. And the fact that in a lot of instances there isn't a dad there, because he is in a lot of ways the enforcer. But yeah, that recognition and that differentiation between real and not real, unless that has deteriorated so badly in the Zoomer generation that they genuinely should not have games, this experiment is already bad just based on the fact that they're putting people in a VR environment and then treating their behavior in the VR environment that they know is a VR environment as if it is indicative of what they would do in real life in that same circumstance. That's a problem. The goal of the proposed research, there we go, is to build on the promising findings from PLS recent R21 grant, and I haven't looked that up yet, that developed a dating simulation as a new experimental paradigm for examining alcohol's role in acquaintance sexual assault perpetration committed by men against women. So they've framed it specifically. This is only about male perpetration, right? So this research that's being funded, the funding of this research, the entire goal here is to frame sexual assault that takes place because of alcohol consumption, as something that men do to women. Not something that can happen to both sexes, not something that can be done by both sexes. Just whenever there's alcohol involved, the guy is a rapist. That's your federal government funded that, right? The first specific aim involves enhancing the VR dating simulation based on insights from our empirical findings and new technological developments. It will be three-dimensional, with participants wearing head-mounted displays that immerse them in the virtual world with their female companion. The second involves systematically evaluating the impact of situational cues manipulated within the virtual reality environment, which are expected to evoke the in-the-moment cognitions and feelings that are hypothesized to increase the likelihood of sexual aggression among men predisposed to be sexually aggressive. So again, specifically, they are framing this as something only men do and only women experience. Right? There is no equivalent women do this too. So they've got this experiment, right? They're putting men in this environment that they know is not real. They're assailing them with in-the-moment cues. Probably stuff that indicates, in normal circumstances, that indicates consent. Right? The woman flirts with them, the woman acts receptive, and so on. And but he knows she's drunk. And therefore anything he does then is considered sexually aggressive. The third specific aim involves examining the effects of acute alcohol consumption on men's sexually aggressive responses. Then the virtual simulation. Based on the findings from studies associated with specific aim 2, situational factors will be manipulated, resulting in a 2 alcohol condition, sober versus intoxicated target. So, in other words, they're looking at this from the perspective of, is he drunk, or from the perspective of, is she drunk? Higher low-level cue that affects participants' perceptions of the woman's sexual interest. So if he's drunk and she flirts, or if she seems drunk and she flirts, versus higher low-level cues that affect participants' sense of entitlement and anger after a refusal. And this is, again, right here, this is a feminist assumption, right? So they're going to take scenarios. This is, again, the welfare department. Health and Human Services is the welfare department. The welfare department funded a study in which they are going to put guys in a virtual reality environment they know is not real, with indicators that the girl is drunk, or they are going to get the guy drunk, and then they are going to have a girl flirt with him, and either they're going to have a sober guy reacting to a drunk girl flirting, or they're going to have a drunk guy reacting when a girl who has been flirting with him suddenly is no longer receptive. And they consider that normal.
I would think that, just the fact that they're going into this knowing that it's not a real situation, that this is made up, this is all fictional. Mm-hmm. You can't possibly get an accurate reaction out of these people. So how in any way, shape, or form is this supposed to be scientific in nature?
Yeah, already it doesn't seem scientific.
No.
But they're clearly trying to manipulate men into certain behaviors, right? Mm-hmm. They're pushing men into flirting back and engaging in, like the pursuing behaviors that men engage in when they're interested in a gal and she seems receptive. And then they're pushing men into reacting while drunk when a gal that has seemed receptive suddenly starts acting bitchy instead. and they're doing this in an environment the guy knows is not real. And the question becomes, are they telling them what the experiment is? Or are they just saying, hey, we got this VR game you can play. Check this out. Oh, but you got to drink a beer first. You know? Because
again, there's this age-old assumption that the female sexual experience is inherently receptive, and that the male sexual experience is inherently what's the word? Penetrative.
mm-hmm.
I would say. It's often assumed that the word "fuck" means for a penis to fuck a vagina. But again, that dates back to the chivalry problem. That it's men that do things to women, and it's women that receive things from men. But you could just as easily portray it in the opposite direction. I mean, how does a penis not receive a vagina? I mean, a vagina certainly doesn't penetrate a penis, but it envelops a penis. If you want to use the proactive terminology, and in that sense, a penis can be receptive to a vagina.
In the same way that a person can be receptive to a hug.
Exactly, exactly. In either direction, or in both, or neither. We've just got so used to this idea that that men fuck women and not the other way around.
Yep.
Even though it's clearly both. You're both doing the fucking. You're both doing the receiving, shall we say?
Yeah.
Yep. And in terms of this simulation and this experiment, that's completely being ignored, right? The whole underlying scaffolding of this is the idea that in a sexual encounter, men only pursue, women are only pursued, and if someone's in the wrong, it's always only the man. Nothing that women do that is aggressive, rude, or dishonest is abuse. But anything a man does that a woman objects to is abuse. So if she is aggressive, rude, and dishonest with him, and he responds with any type of objection at all, even just walking away and saying, okay, you're being a bitch, I don't want anything to do with you, that's him being rapey, not her wasting his time.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So if you know a guy's flirting with you, you have flirted back, you've gotten him to buy you 2 or 3 drinks, and then all of a sudden you turn off the affection because you've gotten what you wanted and you don't want anything else from him. There's nothing wrong with that, ladies, according to this behavioral study. But if he gets upset that you just got $30 or $40 worth of drinks out of him, and by pretending to be interested, and then all of a sudden you walked away and quit flirting with him because you've tapped him out, that's him being rapey. That's the idea that they're trying to promote here. So this then, they support, quote unquote support this with the following. Okay, and it's all showing on the screen. Good. Risk factors associated with sexual assault perpetration will be assessed in a separate session and are expected to interact with alcohol and cue conditions. And cue conditions, again, are flirting. Flirting or not flirting, right? And flirting can include anything from batting eyelashes and saying sweet things to dressing with a purpose of getting people to look at your body, and then moving to emphasize that your particular interest is in this guy in particular looking at your body. Like wiggling a hip, raising the hem of your skirt, bending forward to show more cleavage. All the things that we ladies do when we want to command a man's attention, because we know those visual cues like are like cocaine to a guy. We know that. So yeah, all of this is, again, coded language, right? So Q conditions such that. Oh, go ahead. I thought somebody was starting to talk.
No.
Okay.
Not over here.
I was muted.
Okay. Such that intoxicated men who are predisposed to sexual aggression, example, high pre-existing levels of hostile masculinity, and exposed to sexual interest and entitlement/anger cues. In other words, again, this woman demonstrates an interest in you and then cuts it off without warning or any obvious reason. That's what they mean when they say exposed to sexual interest and entitlement/anger cues are hypothesized to be most likely to be sexually aggressive. Further studies can alter aspects of the simulation to increase generalizability to different populations. They want to be able to accuse as many men as possible. That's what that means. The applicant's long-term goal is to identify modifiable risk and protective factors that can be used to develop evidence-based prevention and treatment interventions to reduce sexual violence. So what they're looking for, what they're trying to justify here, and this is another key factor, right? When somebody is accused of a sexual assault and then they get arrested and they get charged with the crime and prosecuted, they get a psych eval as part of the prosecution. And that psych eval determines their mentality for the court system and in a way that is used to indicate that it's likely that they're guilty because they have certain attitudes or beliefs or, that they have certain levels of feelings and stuff like that. Men aren't allowed to have feelings, right? And then after the case is over, after the hearing is over, if they have been convicted, then they are subjected to a perpetrator program. And I know at least one guy who was falsely convicted, who was forced to go through that kind of perpetrator program before his conviction was basically overturned. And that program gaslighted him so badly that he lost his mind. And his behavior thereafter was completely different than his prior behavior. And he basically just went nuts. Like, started doing unrealistic shit. Thinking that he was going to succeed with it and stuff. But yeah, in any case, that's what they're doing. They're looking for things to add to these perpetrator programs to gaslight men. You have these attitudes and beliefs. So when I looked into this, and I thought, all right, what the hell is hostile masculinity? So I started looking into it. I looked it up on Google. And of course, Google has this nice little AI assistant that goes through these various publications that have already been, like, you have everything from PubMed here, Birmingham University, Springer, which is a conglomerate of various research papers and stuff, UCLA Communication, Sage Journals, another sort of depository of different research. You can find a lot of stuff for free on Springer that is behind paywalls in other locations and stuff. But so hostile masculinity, what the AI assistant gleaned from this set of publications is that it is a personality profile that includes attitudes and behaviors that can lead to sexual aggression. So it's specifically defining masculinity as rapey. That is what the term does. It defines masculinity as rapey. It goes on to say that it's characterized by a need for dominance, distrust, and hostility toward women. And then it has a whole set of components and risk factors. Goes on, sexual dominance, hostility toward women, adversarial sexual beliefs, rape myth acceptance, and acceptance of interpersonal violence. Which you kind of wonder about these last ones because so rape myth acceptance, For instance, what constitutes a rape myth is defined by feminists who consider a woman's given consent invalidated by her later withdrawal of it. So if you state the belief that when a woman consents to sex, it's fair for a man to take her at her word and believe her, that's considered a rape myth. Right? So if you accept that, you're engaging in hostile masculinity right there, according to feminists. Acceptance of interpersonal violence, a belief that force is a legitimate way to establish compliance. Right? They say that, but then if you accept that violence is a thing that exists in society that you should be prepared to avoid or defend yourself from, that's also considered acceptance of interpersonal violence. So, for instance, acknowledging that walking through certain neighborhoods increases your risk of getting mugged, especially if you look like you might have money. That's acceptance of interpersonal violence, and therefore you're a rapey bastard. So y'all better get cracking, go into a gang neighborhood in expensive clothing with those shoes that guys are shooting each other over this year again, and don't assume that you might get mugged there because that makes you a rapey bastard. Like, that's basically a feminist attitude.
Yeah, when a woman says yes, it doesn't mean yes. It means to be confirmed.
Mm-hmm.
And when a woman says no, it doesn't mean no. It means to be confirmed. And not even to be confirmed by her. It means to be confirmed by the state. Isn't there someone you forgot to ask?
Yeah.
And it's not even Jesus. And it's not even her family. Like these things were apparently back in the olden days. It's the state gets to decide whether a woman's consent counts or not. Good times.
Well, and if a woman says yes and then the state decides that she didn't mean it, and you disagree and you argue, that makes you a rapey bastard and indicates that you're guilty.
Unbelievable. I mean, and I love this attitude, how they feel that they have just the moral high ground. Well, if we tell you these things, then, it's going to deter you from committing this heinous act, right? Well, no, that is laughable. That's like the people who put several locks on their doors or their cars and all these alarms and shit. Anyone who wants to steal from you is going to find a way to do it. They are not going to be deterred by anything that you do to them, or put in their way. If they want a thing, a thief is going to try and steal it.
Yep.
You can't train a criminal to not be a criminal.
In fact, if you've got a lot of locks on your door, you know what they do? They wait until you come home at a time when there isn't a bunch of neighbors out and about in your neighborhood. And they come up quietly behind you with a gun, and they make you let them into the house.
Yep.
Right.
A gun, you say?
Yep. that kind of thing is happening. Or a knife. Or
they don't bother with any of this shit. They just rip you out of your home. They just stick their foot in your door when you're trying to get in.
Yep.
And then they pull you out into the street. And then they get you arrested for being racist.
Yep. Or they go after... In fact, they don't have to take your stuff out of your house. Right? They get into your bank account. They don't even need access to you. They don't need access to your phone. They don't need access to your computer. All they got to do is have access to the right group of people that warehouses your information along with a shit ton of other people, and they get access to your bank account. Right? But yeah, in terms of all of this, the upshot is that feminists have created a framework by which they can define rape as something strictly a male behavior, strictly a female experience, at the hands of men, that it doesn't matter when women do it, and that normal male behavior, being the person who pursues in a relationship, which they define as a desire to control, right? Expectations that women will not be assholes. And yeah, Derek Workman points out they can steal your house now. Electronically, they can steal your house. But the women will not lie to you, that women will not fake interest and then get money out of you and walk away and things like that. Those expectations are deemed rapey when men have them. Yeah. When men don't trust women, that's deemed rapey. When men don't like women, that's deemed rapey, right? When men believe that women exploit them after women have exploited them over and over again, that's inherently rapey, according to these people.
When men refuse to have sex with women, that's rapey.
Yeah, we've been told that actually on social media by feminists arguing that denying women what they want is sexual abuse. If women want to be a little hoe for a minute, and you say, not with me, you're a rapist. Without ever having sex with them. If you say, I'm sorry, you're going to have to find somebody else, I'm gay. That's rapey. Seriously. Yeah, John Doe, gays are grapey. But they're very nice. There we go.
You don't have to say grapey on.
Yeah, I know. I don't like it either. Look,
we're not monetized anyway. Rape, suicide, Hitler, Nazis. Nobody gives a fuck here.
There we
say
go.
What you want to say.
That by the way is an order of operations, or not operations, but a full sentence. Rape, suicide, Hitler, Nazis.
You've
just been told what to do. Just make sure that you're dealing with Hitler, Nazis, and not just people you just don't like. Don't be from the everything I don't like is Nazi and everything you say makes you Hitler school of debate. Acceptance of interpersonal violence is an interesting thing too, because if you go to statistics on domestic violence, the overwhelming majority of cases are female perpetrated, female initiated, right? You have, John Doe points out his comment can still get filtered. That's true. It bugs me though, all right, because if I'm not uncomfortable with you saying it, it should be all right. Right? I am arguably the one person who should be able to make it okay. It's like getting the N-word passed from a black person. I am a rape victim. Well, I was a rape victim. I am a rape survivor. I was raped at gunpoint. Right? I was molested as a child, and I was violently raped by another kid as a child. So I have male perpetrators, I have female perpetrators in my past. Nothing that happened to me happened after I was an adult either. It was all childhood trauma, childhood and adolescence. The gunpoint one was in my adolescence, and it was because I was hanging out with criminals. And they committed a crime against me. Huge surprise, guys. If you hang out with criminals, you might become a crime victim, just so you know. But
please join us on Rumble and all the other all the other
channels
on which we're available,
where we're allowed to talk more.
Yeah,
like all of these things that happened to me were horrible when they happened, and it took me a long time to recover from them. But the one thing that I've maintained throughout that time period, throughout that recovery, is that line, right, from Labyrinth. You have no power over me. It's not happening to me now. They're not doing it to me now. None of them have access to me now. I'm sure as fuck not giving them the power to re-traumatize me by being afraid of a word. Word. I mean, come on. I know. It's one of these things that if we can't talk about it, we can't stop it from happening again. We can't stop it from happening to other people. We can't stop other people from suffering because of it. So you're damn right. I am a thriver. And no, I wish that stuff didn't happen to me. I wish that I never experienced any of it. Am I still afraid of it? No. Am I still suffering trauma today? No. I mean, shit. It was 30 years ago plus. Most of it was more than 40 years ago. I'm not that much of a wimp, guys. But yeah, I understand YouTube might hide your comment, censor your comment. I'm just going to call it what it is, because that is censorship, if you use that word. But nobody should be afraid to use it in front of me. It's bullshit. It's just a word when you're saying it. The concept is something that we have to deal with, because it happens in real life. And if we just use newspeak to gloss that over, we are doing a terrible disservice to everyone who has experienced it. Male, female, adult, child, doesn't matter. If we can't examine what people have done and what has happened to people and look for remedies and deal with it honestly, then it's going to go on forever.
Through dangers untold and hardships unnumbered, I have fought my way here to the castle beyond the Goblin City, to take back the child you have stolen, for my will is as strong as yours, and my kingdom is as great. Altogether now, you have no power
over me. Yep, and that is my attitude. Wholeheartedly. You can't make me afraid. Only I can make me afraid. And I'm not going to do it. So, yeah. But this is the take on hostile masculinity. I went to look at Grok, too. I asked Grok a whole bunch of questions, but we aren't going to read the whole thing. Later, probably after we're done with the video that we're going through now in after shows, I'll go through the entire Grok conversation here. But I will read this part. So I asked Grok, what's the meaning of the feminist term hostile masculinity? And Grok had an answer. The feminist term hostile masculinity refers to a specific expression of masculinity that is characterized by aggression, dominance, and hostility, particularly toward women or those perceived as challenging traditional gender norms. It's often used to describe behaviors or attitudes that reinforce patriarchal power structures through intimidation, violence, or suppression of others, especially women or non-conforming individuals. In feminist theory, hostile masculinity is typically contrasted with healthier or more equitable forms of masculinity. So the Goofus and Gallant school of behavioral modification, right? Goofus is toxic and hostile, and Gallant is manageable. It's linked to concepts like toxic masculinity, though the two aren't identical. Hostile masculinity specifically emphasizes overt aggression or antagonism, and of course toxic masculinity, it has a whole range of things. Scholars and activists might point to examples like misogynistic rhetoric, sexual harassment, or physical violence as manifestations of this phenomenon. The term comes up in discussions about how societal expectations of men to be tough, unemotional, or controlling can foster attitudes that harm both women and men themselves. It's not saying all masculinity is bad, just that this particular flavor is destructive. So then, I looked up hostile femininity, right? Well, obviously, we've had this discussion about hostile masculinity and toxic masculinity, and it's clearly antagonistic toward women, right? So what is hostile femininity? According to Google's AI, hostile femininity is a personality trait that describes a woman who is hostile toward other women. Right? You're a man, your hostile masculinity makes you hostile toward the opposite sex. If you're a woman, hostile femininity makes you hostile toward the same sex. It can include behaviors such as gossiping, social ostracism, and accepting rape myths. So if you agree that when you consent to sex, that consent is valid and it is irrefutable later on, you're engaging in hostile femininity. Lauren, do you feel like you're hostile? Are you still there, Lauren?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry. So what do you think? Do you feel hostile?
No, women are not. They're not capable of hostility. Are you kidding me? It is impossible.
Oh my gosh, this is insulting actually when I look at it. So men are hostile toward women, but women. Feminists can't acknowledge any sort of female hostility toward men. Women can only be hostile toward other women. So female hostility, intrasexual competition, same-sex aggression for reproductive advantage, right? Rape myth acceptance, hostility toward women, judging women based on factors like revealing clothing. If you don't like some little hoe sidling up to your guy and shoving her cleavage up his nose, you're hostile. You're hostile toward women, Lauren.
You try it, you'll see how hostile I'll fucking get. Oh, damn right.
I will admit that unless my husband is uncomfortable with female attention, I think it's funny.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
because I know it's not going. He raised two of the most adorable daughters, and his ex-wife was a gymnast, and when she was young, she was an absolute cutie. She was just absolutely beautiful. She was better looking than me, and that was I could say that with no discomfort whatsoever. She just wasn't very nice, and she cheated on him and left, and that was her mistake.
That's usually how it goes. The cuter they are, they tend to have a mean streak.
I noticed that a lot of attractive women are not very nice. Actually, You're right. Although I have met some attractive women who are very nice, and and I've been attractive enough that I had some modeling jobs, not big ones, but. And I didn't have the same inclinations to be bitchy and mean to men in general. Somewhat toward other women, but other women drive me nuts.
One good thing about attractive women is they have no qualms about fighting other attractive women.
Yeah.
Much the same way strong men have no qualms about fighting other strong men if the occasion comes upon them. So never mind finding a woman who will look at you in a certain way. Find a woman who will fight any bitch but will never fight you.
Yeah, chick fights can be very entertaining. Actually,
I don't want to sound like a simp, but I found myself a woman who will fight any bitch but she loves me.
Yes.
And there you go.
100%.
So you find a woman who will fight any bitch, and then you start investing in Jell-O. Then you sell tickets.
Giggity.
See, we are engaging in hostile femininity now. But so that's what Google has to say about it. And by the way, this conversation I had with Grok gets the apex fallacy. When I started feeding Grok information, studies, statistics, and stuff like that, Grok came to the conclusion that feminists are full of shit. But if you want to read that conversation with us, you're going to have to sign up to be part of future after shows, because that's where it's going to be. It's not going to be in the main show. So, like I said, go to honeybadgerbrigade.com and feedthebadger.com and check out ways to support us, because that is where this content is going to be. The full conversation, anyway. Lauren, what were you going to say?
I think it's a little ridiculous to gender or try to engender hostility, because people can be hostile towards other people. It's you're hostile towards a set of behaviors, not just because it's a woman or just because I'm a man. Now there are hostile things that women do to other women, but it's not necessarily like it's not. I don't know how to say what I'm trying to say. It's not something that only
it's not gendered.
It's not like being mean to women. Anybody can be mean to women. You know what I mean? That's not a hostile female. It's not the epitome of a hostile female. A hostile female is one that is just, no matter what the circumstances are, she's in a foul fucking mood, and whatever is in her way is the object of her ire.
Well, I mean, you think about it this way, all right? That scenario we talked about before. You get home from work, you're dead tired. You're not necessarily paying as much attention when you walk from your car to your house. You get onto your doorstep, and all of a sudden there's a person behind you, and something sharp and cold and metal is up against your ribs, and the voice behind you says, "Don't say anything. Unlock your door. We are going inside. I'm going to take all your shit." Right? And you say, "I don't have anything. Don't do this." Anything along the lines of a refusal. The person responds with, "Why are you being so hostile?"
Yeah.
You say, "Don't rob me," and they say, "Why are you calling me names? What's wrong with you?" Right? That is feminists using the terms hostile masculinity and hostile femininity.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You get into a sales call. Somebody calls your house and says, "I got a great deal for you. I'm gonna waterproof your basement for $10,000, and it's guaranteed. It's definitely not going to cost you more than $10,000." And you say, "Oh, that's awesome. You see, I just bought this apartment building, and my basement is almost the size of an entire city block." "Oh, well, that might cost a little more." And you say, "Oh, you said guaranteed price, $10,000. I want the guaranteed price." The person says, "Why are you so hostile? Why are you so entitled?" "Well, you promised me that. You told me it was guaranteed." Right? When someone says, "I consent, I agree, I'm going to do this with you," when someone puts their hands on you and actually demonstrates physically that they are a participant that is involved because they want to be involved, they know they're involved, they're genuinely interacting with you, and then later they come along and say, "Why are you so hostile? Why are you accusing me of consenting? That was rape. You raped me. The whole time I climbed on top of you and rode you like a bull in a bar, the mechanical bull at the bar. Like, that was you raping me." Like, that's femininity or feminism calling men hostile masculinity, or accusing men of hostile masculinity. And when women acknowledge that happens, that's femininity, right? Hostile femininity, according to feminism. So the Grok conversation, the term hostile femininity isn't as widely established or consistently defined in feminist discourse as hostile masculinity, because they don't want to talk about it, right?
Mm-hmm.
but it's sometimes used to describe behaviors or attitudes associated with femininity that are aggressive, manipulative, or antagonistic, often in ways that reinforce harmful gender dynamics or stereotypes. Unlike hostile masculinity, which has a more specific academic and cultural footprint tied to patriarchy, hostile femininity tends to appear in less formal contexts, like online debates or critiques of gender roles, and lacks a unified theoretical backing. In other words, feminists have not really explored this idea at all. They just came up with a bit of a definition in order to manage the fact that people noticed that they did not treat the genders equally when creating the term hostile masculinity. Right? When it's used, it might refer to women who weaponize traditional feminine traits. Emotional manipulation, passive aggressiveness, or leveraging social expectations of female fragility to undermine others, including other women. For example, some might label mean girl behavior like exclusionary cliques or relational aggression as a form of hostile femininity. In certain conservative or anti-feminist circles, it's occasionally thrown around to critique women who are seen as overly confrontational or anti-male, though this usage is more rhetorical than scholarly. So, and there's no definition in feminist literature. So I thought, all right, so there's both terms essentially refer to hostility toward women, or at least perceived hostility toward women. Not a single term for perceived hostility toward men. So I asked, did you notice that feminist discussions on both terms refer to them in terms of that sex's hostility toward women, but not toward men? And all of a sudden, yes, Grok noticed. In feminist discourse, hostile masculinity is explicitly framed as hostility directed toward women, rooted in patriarchal power dynamics. The focus is on how it harms women, reinforces male dominance, or pushes perceived weakness. With hostile femininity, the pattern's less consistent, since it's not a mainstream feminist term, but where it appears in feminist adjacent critiques, it is often still centered on harm to women. Women policing each other's behavior to enforce patriarchal standards, slut-shaming, or competition over male approval. When it's used outside feminist circles, then it might imply hostility toward men, but not when it's used in feminist circles. So then I asked, does feminism have any term for hostility toward men that feminist scholars have discussed as often and as seriously as they have discussed hostility toward women? And it says, feminist scholarship doesn't have a widely recognized, consistently used term for hostility toward women or toward men that matches the depth and frequency of terms like hostile masculinity or misogyny for hostility toward women.
The term is feminism.
Yeah, the term is feminism. So the rest of this conversation, once I got Grok to notice that, I started attacking patriarchy theory, and I got some interesting results. I went from patriarchy theory to the supporting claims about intimate partner and sexual violence that women use to presume female oppression, and I even discussed a little bit about their claims about history. Grok had some interesting responses. So like I said, we will go over this whole thing beginning to end in a future patron-only after show. But I wanted to get across here. Where we started was at this federal funding, all right? $2.5 million. $2.5 million for one study at one university using questionable methods at best to get men to make it look like they're rapey bastards by responding to how women flirt when they're tipsy or drunk. And by responding when a woman how women flirt and then cut off their attention when they're tipsy or drunk, or when the man is tipsy or drunk. Right? So $2.6 million to help students at a university frame drunk rape, alcohol-facilitated rape, as something that men do, women experience, and that happens because men have hostile attitudes toward women. And you paid for that. That came out of your pocket.
That makes me hostile.
Yeah, that makes me hostile too. So we didn't get a lot of super chats. We didn't get a lot of super chows. But Meredith G did give us $5 and said HBR Talk 345, honey for the badgers. So does this sound like hostile, aggressive feminism to you? I personally think it's pretty hostile.
Yeah.
Fucking hostile, as Pantera would have put it. They had this song called "Fucking Hostile."
Yeah.
Sometimes it's okay to be pretty fucking hostile.
Yeah,
it's one
true.
of those situations where it is.
But sometimes it's political, and then sometimes the government will pay you for it. Richard Bier says he wants to speak with our manager. Okay, but tweet at honeybadgerbite on X. Post to at honeybadgerbite on X. That's our manager. So, I think with that, I am going to go ahead and call it, because this is pretty much what I wanted to go over today, and we pretty much went over it. I don't really know that there's that much more to say about this, other than pointing out the double standard and pointing out the abysmal failure in creating research conditions and methodology that will get trustworthy results that can be generalized to the rest of the public. This is basically the same fake made up shit that you see justifying the Violence Against Women Act and other types of feminist lobbied legislation. So with that, I will thank my two co-hosts for going over this with me. Thanks to the listeners for taking a look at this shit with me. And thanks to everybody who works in the background to make HBR Talk happen. It's not very hostile of me, is it? Good night, all.
I got it. See you next Tuesday, you cunts.
There you go. See you next Tuesday.
No power over me.
See you next Thursday.
Men's right activists
Thursday
are
too,
machines,
yes,
dude. Okay? They are literal machines. They are talking point machines. They are impossible to fucking deal with, especially if you have like a couple dudes who have good memory on top of that too. Holy shit, you're fucked.